Welcome to the podcast, Kyle.
Dan, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's a nice hot summer day.
Yeah, it is. I stayed inside all day.
Oh, good. Very good. Hey, Jim, how's the weather for you?
Great, great. Thanks for having me on the podcast, guys.
Oh, yeah, we love having you on
Anytime.
here.
Anytime.
Thanks.
Well, very good. Hey, all right, so we got some fun things to talk about this week. So, Jim, there's something that you teased us when we were chatting about organizing this that I want to learn some more about, but we're going to save that for later in the show.
Sounds
So, this is
great.
going to be excellent.
All right.
To start off with here, Sasank has been on a roll lately blogging about Kibana and PeopleSoft with some of the new images. It's just been awesome to read. I haven't had as much time to play with this yet, unfortunately, as I would like to. So it's really nice to see him put a bunch of stuff out there. Um, but the latest blog post that at least I saw come across today, he talks about building related content frames and classic pages that will use Kibana as the data source. And I thought this was pretty cool. I mean, I love related content anyway, but to be able to pull Kibana dashboards right into components is exactly what we want Kibana for.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Because some of the things we've seen in the early days of this Kibana stuff within PeopleSoft has been, kind of like dynamic tiles that serve up from Kibana, or you click through and it's kind of like a fluid component that just basically serves up a full-on Kibana dashboard. But to have it within a classic page, I think was a pretty neat idea and pretty cool to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
Yep, I agree. I agree. This is cool. I'm looking over his blog post right now as we're talking, and I'm a huge fan of related content. It's been there for a long time. Barely, almost not used at all in Classic, which I always thought was a shame because there's so much value in it
Mm-hmm.
from Classic. So this is really encouraging. This is exciting. This is a good use of it. One of the things I'm curious about, and I would like to see more about is what about passing parameters? One of the values of related content is not that the content within related content is related to the component topic in general, but rather that the content is related to the specific level zero transaction
Sure.
for
Right.
related content. So that as you're going, next enlist, previous enlist, it's actually changing the content in related content. I think that would be cool as well. Take this the next step and maybe pass parameters from, say, level zero or page field parameters or something onto Kibana for, say, some filtering or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm looking at the blog post as well, and he is passing a few parameters, but they're
Mm,
very Kibana specific, obviously. But it's like
exactly.
dashboard, the view of what this should be displaying. But I don't know that it is like you said, kind of like that um, record level kind of parameter getting passed at all as like a query string or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm curious if that's possible to a dashboard to pass that in the URL with Kibana. Dan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it is because I do think most of the, well, I should say, I think filters you can pass as query string parameters.
Right.
So it
Okay.
might not be necessarily that the visualization is built with the like criteria using that,
Hmm.
but you could potentially pass filters through the query string.
Filter down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if like I don't know if you're looking at I don't know what the visualization might be, but if we'll just pick like purchase order or something. If you could just filter on purchase order ID,
Hmm.
maybe you could pass that in as well. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering too, like if you can
Right.
do, I don't know, I guess level zero is the appropriate place to pass that stuff. But even if it's more just like, hey, show me all of the purchase orders for my department that this purchase order is related to. So maybe
oh
I'm
yeah.
looking at more like high level budget things. I'm looking at the specific purchase order, but hey,
Right.
show me where I am maybe in my budget.
Or supplier ID or
Right.
something.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It has to be at a higher level so that you can have summaries. Like, for example, purchase order ID.
Mhm.
No offense, Kyle, that might be
Right.
a little bit too detailed to get a good summary.
Exactly.
But yeah, like you said, Dan, department, manager level,
Hmm.
something a higher level so we can see some sort of a aggregation of the
Yeah.
data. And level zero being a good starting point for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Cool. I'm almost confident. I mean, I haven't even tested. I don't even know. I can't see why. I can't see why it wouldn't work. It
Yep.
seems like a
Yeah.
great next step. And one thing too, one of the things that I've done with related content is when we're talking about an external service like this, I mean, PeopleSoft related content is awesome from PeopleSoft to PeopleSoft. It's kind of built for that. The parameter passing mechanism works well with PeopleSoft to PeopleSoft. What I've struggled with is PeopleSoft to external. Uh,
Mhm.
Now, it's not that it's a struggle. It's just it requires perhaps an intermediate step to get
Mm.
the URL into the appropriate format. So, like PeopleSoft thinks in key value pairs when passing items into parameters, but you might actually need to concatenate with different conditions in between, like an and an or for doing qualifications and SQL-like type
Yeah.
of
Right.
requests in the URL. So what I've done for that intermediate step is create a service that's an iScript, and the iScript then receives the parameters through
Mm.
the related content mapping, generates the appropriate URL, and then just does a response.redirect right into the service. So
Oh.
PeopleSoft is happy, the other side is happy. Works out great.
So it's kind of like a wrapper around it, almost
Oh,
kind of
that's a
thing.
good question. See, I hesitate to call it a wrapper because it's actually just I don't know, maybe
Transformer or
yeah,
yeah.
that's a good way to say it because you're basically transforming the URL
Right.
because the related content service invokes the iScript. The iScript takes its parameters and then says, okay, now I got a new URL and just basically tells the browser, hey, instead of loading me, 302,
Right.
location changed, go off somewhere else and get the real content.
Mm.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. That's
It's a
really
great
cool.
idea.
I think I don't know. I haven't looked at Kibana query string parameters, but I'm thinking this might be a good place for that.
This is one of the things that I'm so excited about Kibana being integrated with the
Yeah.
PeopleSoft environment is it feels like we're on the ground floor of opening up
Mhm.
so many opportunities, right? I mean,
Mm,
Sasank's had some great blog posts. Jim, you have some great ideas. And I mean, we're just scratching the surface because we really have hardly spent time with this to like
right.
get our hands on it and wrap our head around some of these ideas and just see what the possibilities are. And so like I said when we found out this was being announced, I think this is going to be the one of the biggest changes, a major change to how PeopleSoft works.
Yeah. Now, what do you guys think? See, here's the one challenge I have with Kibana and Elastic today. I mean, take for example Fluid. One of the well, to say the two primary search strategies for Fluid components, they are pivot grids and Elasticsearch. I mean, if you look at Oracle documentation, that's what they recommend for a Fluid component search strategy. If you're going to have search,
Mhm.
just quickly, employee self-service doesn't use search, so it's not an issue.
Right.
Uh, what I like about pivot grid search is it's real time. I can enter a transaction and see the results instantly. What I don't like about pivot grid search, among many things, is that it is a little bit on the slow side
Right.
in
Right.
comparison to Elastic, which is snap your fingers instant. But Elastic is stale.
Mm.
What do you guys think about that with Kibana? I mean, do you think that might be an issue? These analytics and things, is staleness an issue?
It is now. Um, the
Yeah.
yeah, and the thing about it is probably now and for the next effectively the next 2 years, that is the honest truth is that
Right.
data does get stale. The good news is that we know the tools team knows that's an issue, and I've already
Yeah,
started publicly talking about that they are trying to find ways to fix that issue because they also know that that is a huge hindrance to some of the adoption or maybe the usefulness of
Mhm.
Elasticsearch.
right,
Yeah,
right.
it's good to see that it's on the roadmap, officially or not. At least they're talking about it, like Dan mentioned, because it is, it's like this is obviously a better tool. It's a better user experience, except you've got this big hole, and it's the timeliness of the data, right, and how stale it is,
Right.
like you said. So, um, I think they see that they're kind of maybe working out some ideas on how to make it more real time. So. I think it's just a matter of when.
Mhm.
I think Dan, you kind of threw out that 2 year time frame, maybe 1 to 2 years. That'd be nice,
Yeah.
but we'll see. That's just kind of shot in the dark. Who knows? But
Yeah.
I could see that I could see that kind of making sense about
Yeah.
that time frame.
And I'm guessing when you say that time frame, you're thinking tools releases.
I'm thinking
Well, there you
tools
go.
release and customer adoption, right? Because
Good
858
point.
dropped somewhat recently, so we know that that 12 to 18-month window's, in play. And then once a tools version drops, there's time before people even adopt it. I mean, maybe even 18 months after it's released in some cases.
But
So
Dan, when you say people, I think what Jim was getting at is the apps team probably adopting it, right, Jim?
I wasn't even
yeah,
thinking about that, but that's a good point.
Right?
that's true. Yes, yeah. So that maybe
Because
adds a little bit of time in there as well.
that's
Right.
that's where my mind just went to when you
Mhm.
mentioned that, Jim. Is yeah, okay, 2 years. It's in tools now. The apps team has to add it to their components or their transactions or their workflow or whatever to
Right.
when this data changes. We also have to trigger this whatever the framework is to get this into real time Elasticsearch, and that needs to be added into the app as well. Um,
Right.
I'm assuming that's what's going
Mhm.
to have to happen, right?
So then not
Huh.
only do you need tools, you need a image catch up to then get this
An
functionality.
image catch up as
Yep.
well. So yeah, and then like you said, Dan, with the customer adoption, you tools, and then when it's in an image, you need to apply the image.
Mhm.
So yeah, that might not be quite as that 2 year might be I don't know. Yeah, it could be tools, it could be the tools in the app, but
Yeah,
then
I'm
there's the
thinking
customer adoption as well.
2 years is probably pretty aggressive in that case.
Well,
But
I don't know because they do. It seems like today that the tools and apps teams are kind of building together.
yeah,
A great
yeah.
example of that is I mean, this is 5 years ago even. People Tools 854. I mean, HR came out right after that with Fluid Content and Self Service, and they were building it
Mm,
before Fluid even released. So
That's true.
yeah.
yeah,
And I think the first HR image on 858 has some of these dashboards for Kibana,
Mhm.
right?
there you go. See, they're
Yep.
So
building it as
s-
they're
so
it,
there is some of that pretty quickly, I guess, now that
right.
you mention that.
And that makes sense too because apps teams really are the primary customer for people tools.
Yeah.
They're the first customer. So they're taking it, they're building off of it, and then feeding requirements back to the tools team saying, that was great, but you missed the mark in this little spot. Let's fix that piece.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess yeah, I'm with you though. The pivot grid stuff is nice, but I'm just and maybe it's just the shiny new toy, but the Kibana stuff is really exciting me for
Mhm.
Mhm.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And I am excited to get a little more hands on with it because it's got it's got a lot of potential, I think. So not only from the the apps teams, but I think customers. What's the community going to do with this? Because I think it's more than just what kind of dashboards or visualizations we get delivered. I think we in the community and customers can really build some cool stuff as well.
Mhm.
Um, so
Yeah.
I think we're going to start seeing a lot of excitement and a lot of cool stuff popping up around Kibana.
Yes. All right. We're going to change gears here. Jim, you mentioned you've been playing with PTF again recently. And if I remember right, there's some changes in, is it 858 to how PTF functions?
It's actually sooner than that.
Okay.
I I have read the blog post, but it was in an 857 release, and I don't know exactly which one. All I know is that, for the past several years, keeping up with Chrome has been a real challenge with PTF. And we teach PTF all the time. I love teaching PTF. There's so many cool things you can do with it. Uh, I think it's a misunderstood tool. I think there's so much value in it, but we misunderstand really where the value is. But anyways, one of the challenges with PTF has always been by the time that they actually release PTF and we start using it, Chrome has already versioned past the quote supported versions
Mm,
of PTF.
sure.
Uh, Firefox, a few releases ago, Firefox went to an indefinite release number, which I thought was really cool. And I thought, oh, can't wait for Chrome to do that. And then I started poking around and thinking about it. And I thought, it probably has nothing to do with people tools and everything to do with Selenium,
Mm,
the drivers underneath PTF.
yep.
So, um, what we did was we just said, hey, uh, we'll just run our scripts. And fortunately, they run to a yellow warning state because the versions have passed. Or some people have gone in and there's a file you could update to change the version numbers. And I thought, hey, that's cool as well. But a more recent version of People Tools 857, I went in and I said, hey, you know what? We've got a PTF class coming up. Let's make sure that it's still working on Chrome because, you never know these
Yep.
days. And so I went into it and it didn't work. And I thought, oh, that's weird. So I went into the XML file sorry, the configuration file to update the version number, the max version number, to push it out there a little ways and saved the file, opened PTF, and it reset the configuration file. And I thought, oh no, the hack we've all been using for a while to get past Chrome versions is no longer working. That's weird. Why would the PTF team be overwriting? It's almost like they have the version number written themselves and they rewrite it back to the configuration file. And I thought to myself,
Oh.
why would you do that? Why even have a configuration file if you're just going to overwrite it every time you load PTF?
Right.
Anyway, I got to looking and I thought, it's telling me that the maximum version has exceeded no driver found. And I thought to myself, this is Selenium. The drivers are out there. I'm sure they are.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I just Google search for Selenium drivers for Chrome and found the Chromium project for Selenium drivers? And I thought, oh, look at that. There's even one that matches my Chrome version. So I just grabbed it, dropped it in the PTF folder, launched PTF, and ran to success. And I thought, no way. That is way too cool.
Oh,
And I
nice.
said to myself, I said, Jim, you've got to blog this so everyone knows about it. I have the blog post started, but you know how it goes. Sometimes you just run
Yes.
out of time.
Yep.
And then you see that, running across the blogosphere, Oracle blogging about PTF drivers. That, oh, guess I missed my opportunity. But hey, at least when it came from Oracle, we were hearing the truth rather than
Right.
coming from me, where we're hearing anecdotal evidence. This worked for me. I hope it works for you. So at least this way we know, yes, it's meant to work that way. So that's cool. That's cool.
Nice.
But anyway, some of the weird things that I saw with it, in the past, PTF would launch, and when you run it in Chrome, it would launch the PTF runner. Chrome would appear, and then it would run through your script. And at the end, you might get a warning depending on your version numbers. This time, what I saw was Chrome would launch, and then Chrome would go away. Then Chrome would launch again, and Chrome would go away. And iteratively over and over again, like it was in this loop. And I thought that's weird, but I looked in the Selenium driver directory and I noticed several Chrome versions of drivers. And it was, I haven't tested it yet. There's something I need to go back and do. But it almost looked to me like the PTF program now is just iterating over all of the drivers, testing them by version number
Oh.
until it finds one that matches.
Oh, interesting.
It is
Wow.
interesting. And, I was thinking about it. I mean, even today, as you and I were talking about it in a chat, and I thought, I wonder, what if I went back? I mean, because think about it. I mean, Chrome's always current.
Mm-hmm.
Do I really need those old Selenium drivers anymore? Could I
Yeah.
just pull them out so there's only one driver in there?
Mm-hmm.
Would it just run the one?
I would
I don't
guess
know.
so. That-
Yeah, you would think so.
yeah. Because
I
I'm
think it'd be a
guessing they
great thing to
just.
try.
Yeah, because I'm guessing they ship those just for compatibility reasons, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, can you imagine if they delivered PTF with no drivers for Chrome and you try to run it and it says no driver found?
Right.
I mean,
Not a great installation experience.
no.
No.
But actually, wait a minute, hold on, because that's really actually what happened to me. I mean, because I ran it with Chrome and, Chrome is
Mhm.
always
True.
current. By the time I was running Chrome, the drivers were already outdated. And it said, actually, to that effect, no
Hmm.
matching driver found. Huh. So I don't
So
know.
it almost would be better if they just didn't ship and said, "Go get the new ones," because you're gonna probably need them anyways. Versus
Exactly.
like having
Mm-hmm.
to write this blog post about, oh, hmm,
Right. I don't know. I don't know. That's been a struggle since PTF
interesting.
released.
Yeah.
Speaking of PTF, the thing that I am really, really wondering about is IE11 and recording.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
mean, they've been talking about that for a while. The robotic process automation, recording. We got to get away from IE11. I mean, the clock is ticking. I mean, I actually thought IE11 would be gone by now, but it's still there. So I don't know.
It's like
What
IE6 support back in the day. It's just gonna hang on for dear life.
Right.
wasn't there something
Right.
new with 11 though that was finally gonna go away, or am I just was that a dream?
was that was that it? psadmin.conf that we heard that.
Maybe it was because of this upcoming Chrome
Yeah,
recording.
I
I don't.
do feel like I've heard 858 is the last version for 11.
I had heard that as well. In fact,
Yeah.
when we met last time, wow, when we used to be able to travel,
Remember those
when I was in
days?
Minneapolis, so we talked about that. We pulled that up and we looked at the 858 release notes and saw, and
Mhm.
we actually had on air a sigh. Oh, i11 still
That's right.
supported.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
But that's yeah, that train has been going down the tracks for a while.
Hmm.
right,
um,
right.
I guess it's going to be ending soon, but um, yeah,
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
No.
We'll
Well,
see.
it's good to hear that again, Jim. And I'll put a link in the show notes to the blog post as well. So if anyone's interested in reading more about that. But yeah, it's nice
Right.
to see. And I think I like this approach. And it somewhat follows along the line of how they're going to be handling Elasticsearch deployments in the future, or at least how they've talked about handling Elasticsearch deployments in the future, where it's you download the Oracle security plugins for Elasticsearch, and then the intent is that you'll just go download whatever GA version of Elasticsearch is out there, drop in your PeopleSoft plugins to the GA bundle. That way, they can stay up a little quicker with things. Kind of that whole, instead of bring your own Selenium, it's bring your own elk.
Hmm.
Right. I like it. I really, really like it. It's never a question of, oh man, how do we stay current with the drivers?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. So cool. All right, Jim. Tell us something about PeopleSoft that we don't know or might have forgotten.
Let me think for a minute. One of the things that surprises me, it's been there for, I actually don't know how long. I could probably point back a good decade to a blog post. I was working on base 64 encoding. Make that clear, not encryption, encoding. Base 64 is an encoding. I want to make sure we say that's right because people get confused on that.
Uh-huh.
I was working on base 64 encoding for people tools. Because, like for example, you might want to send binary data over integration broker.
Hmm.
People code doesn't do binary, but people code does text. So if you can get something into base 64, you can do just about anything with it. And so I was looking at different ways you could base 64 encode data. And I was, using Java. I was using the database, PL SQL. And in my blog post, and Chris Heller chimes in on my blog there in a comment and says, what about PET, pluggable encryption technology? And I just kind of scratched my head and I said, what is that?
Hmm.
Right.
It's, something that's been there forever that almost nobody talks about. PeopleSoft pluggable encryption technology. And so I looked at it and I thought, oh, yeah, well, you could base 64 encode text using PET. Base 64 encoding binary is going to be really difficult because uh, people code is a text language. And first you have to get it into people code so that you can then run it through PET. But it piqued my interest and I started looking into PET more.
Mm-hmm.
And then, fast forward to today where we're looking at integration and we're looking at tokens. How do we authenticate? I was looking at cloud, PeopleSoft, or sorry, Oracle Cloud, Oracle HCM Cloud to PeopleSoft integrations. Oracle Cloud will create something called a JWT or JOT, a JSON Web Token for token, which contains the username of the logged in user as well as a signature. And I got to looking at PeopleSoft and I said, how can I validate the integrity of that signature using PeopleSoft so that I can have some sort of an SSO from the Oracle HCM Cloud into PeopleSoft without having a full stack for the, like SAML and all of that. And so I got to looking into PET and, it has SHA, HMAX 256, all of that in there. So it's just a matter of building something called an algorithm chain with your key sets, which contains your private keys or your public keys, and the appropriate encryption profiles. So That's what we've done. In our integration tools class, for example, we have a little segment on there that tells you how to generate JSON Web Tokens from PeopleSoft. A JSON Web Token being one of your more common OAuth tokens. But I think more importantly, because I don't really think people should be generating JSON Web Tokens from PeopleSoft. I mean, think about it. It's PeopleSoft is not meant to be a source for authentication.
Hmm.
Uh, the what would you say, the identity provider? um, but rather I want to be able to validate or verify or confirm somebody else's token. So the fact that I can generate, okay, now I can go the other way as well. So being able to generate, I guess, is just one step to prove that, hey, yes, I could also validate somebody else's JSON Web Token using PET, pluggable encryption technology. Very, very cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I will say I've heard of this. I've probably even looked at the pages in tools. I've never played with it. I've never tried it at all. I guess I'm sure there's probably been scenarios that I would have found a use for this, but I just never took the time to dive into it. Um, but that's pretty cool. Yeah, the idea of using it with like Jot tokens sounds kind of cool, and I'm sure there's a lot of other um, OAuth mechanisms or communication that could be used for it. Um, yeah, that's really
Well,
cool.
basically, anything that's, what do you call it, digest, or you have a signature.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that has a signature, if you want to validate the signature, of course, you need the key. Once you have the key, then generate the algorithm chain uh, to validate the signature. Uh, you know, where my work came from in this is, well, first I started with that blog post from Chris. Then somebody emailed me, I don't know, it was a year or two ago, and said, "Hey, Jim, I'm trying to create JSON Web Tokens. Here's what I'm doing with PET." And I thought, what? Wait, using PET for JSON Web Tokens? That's awesome. So I said, hey, you know what? It looks like you're like 99% of the way there. Here, let's just change a couple of these pieces around. And sure enough, we had it. Then teaching an integration tools class, somebody, well, I was teaching in a class, and every time we teach a class, I ask, first question I ask is, hey, introduce yourselves and tell me what it is you want to get out of this class. No, seriously, this is an integration tools class. Don't tell me you want to learn about integration broker. Come on, I know that. That's why you're here. No, seriously, what is it? What is that thing you're working on right now that I could really help you with? And somebody said, hey, I've got to be able to generate JSON Web Tokens. I thought, oh, okay, that's my project tonight. I'll figure it out and we'll come back to class tomorrow and well, I'll share that with you. Then I was doing some side consulting with another group, and I noticed that they were also doing JSON Web Tokens. They were doing actually they were doing HMAC SHA 256 signature verification, so it wasn't technically a JSON Web Token, just using similar algorithms. And I looked and I said, I noticed they were using Java. I said, oh, I see you're reaching out to the JRE to do that. Have you thought about PET? And they're like, "Oh, what?"
A pet?
Yeah, "What?" So, it's been great though. Again, one of those things that I just don't think is known well enough. So yeah, so if you want to investigate anybody, you go to People Tools Security Encryption, and in there you'll find the load encryption libraries, which I don't know that you need to do that. I think they're already loaded. Then you have algorithm chains, key sets, profiles. Let's see, there's the test encryption profile, which I use quite a bit to test to see is the encryption profile working correctly. Let's see. So how it would work is you would create an algorithm chain. An algorithm chain is just a collection of tokens, so or a collection of algorithms. So for example, you almost always start with ASCII to Unicode because PeopleSoft is or Unicode to ASCII. Sorry, I get them confused. I think um, you can find a couple of pre-delivered algorithms as well as some out there in Google Land and Moss that will give you an idea where to start. But they almost always start with a conversion, and then you run through the algorithm chains, sometimes going to binary. Because a lot of these signatures actually do generate binary signatures, then into base 64, and then I think it's ASCII back into Unicode for PeopleSoft because
Mm.
PeopleCode is a Unicode language.
So that's
Then
that's the chain you said is like those
right,
steps, right?
yeah, the chain is just what are the steps to perform the encryption,
Okay.
and then the profile. is basically just a pointer to the chain. Now, I don't do this every day, but and I'm not looking at my notes. I'm just looking here at the at the menu. But you'll find algorithm chains, key sets, and profiles. So the chain is what are the steps basically to invoke this to go from basically piping the output from one into the input of the next algorithm in the chain. Uh, some of those chains require private keys or public keys or some sort of keys. That's where the key set comes in.
Mm.
So an encryption profile is really the combination of the algorithm chain with the appropriate key sets. So you might have an encryption profile that's say for one integration provider and a different encryption profile for a different integration provider. They might be the same algorithm chain, just a different key set, if that
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense.
Yep. Okay. Interesting. So are you able to access this then through people code?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. What is it? PS Crypt? Is that right?
Okay, that library or that class?
Let's see. Create object. Forgive me.
Ugh.
I have it in a doc here.
Yeah, I
Let's
would
take a look.
expect this to be available in people code, right? Because that's probably the primary use case
Absolutely.
for these is to reference it within code as you're, say, generating an integration message.
Yep. Yep. Let me. I've got it right here. Yes. Create object crypt. So
Great.
there's just an object called crypt, and so you use the
Mm,
people code create object with quotes around the word crypt,
Mhm.
okay.
and then you tell it to open your profile. You set your data, and then ask for the result.
Well, that's pretty easy.
It sounds easy.
True. Yes, it definitely sounds easy. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I'm looking at our algorithm chain here for the JSON Web Tokens. PS Unicode to ASCII would be step one, sequence number one. HMAC SHA 256 generates step two, base64 encode step three, and ASCII back to Unicode for step four. Again, it actually is really simple. And, I have the steps right here. I'm looking at it in my integration tools update guide. We've really been talking about as a team releasing this as, say, some sort of a white paper or something
hmm.
downloadable just to get people thinking again about pet and what it can do.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, there's I've seen this. I know I've looked at these pages because it was familiar as you're talking about it. I've never used this. I think there's so many little nooks and crannies like this in tools that kind of surfacing these and just talking about them is awesome because at some point someone's going to say, "Oh yeah, I remember this being talked about," and for a similar situation, whether or not we use it every day. Um, but yeah, that's really cool. So does the tools team deliver new chains as they adapt new algorithms, or has it been fairly static since the release of this?
That's a great question. Let's take a look at the delivered algorithm chains. I just happen to have a vanilla POM image here. You can see there's 18 different algorithm chains. Let's see. You see triple des, PGP.
I,
Yeah, I,
I,
I don't know.
I'm assuming it'd be somewhat current because I'm guessing they use these somewhere in code at times.
Mm, that's a good question.
Or are these? And some of them are going to be dependent enough on private keys that you wouldn't want to ship a generic private key, right?
Well, that's true. You know, I don't see. We're you got me now. We're gonna have to do a search. We're gonna have to do a find in people code search
Oh,
for create object quote crypt to
Right.
see is it delivered anywhere. The
Hmm.
reason that I'm even hesitating is because PeopleSoft has their own PS Cipher stuff.
True.
So
that's true.
And that's
I don't.
stored, yeah, on the servers versus just
Yeah,
an algorithm in the
PS key
tables.
stores and all that. So
Yep.
yeah,
Hmm. We'll have to save that question for later. But it was just a thought I had.
it's
If
a good
this
one.
was a fairly regularly updated feature, or if it was more or less something that was delivered to meet certain user requirements, but it's maybe as like certain algorithms are known to be bad, they get rid of them and replace it with something new. Um, That'd be a good Greg Kelly question.
It would be actually, that's a great Greg Kelly question. I mean, I know that. So actually, you know what? I'll bet the libraries get updated regularly because
Oh,
they're not exactly PeopleSoft libraries. I mean,
mm,
PeopleSoft has, I guess, maybe put a wrapper around them.
Hmm.
But SSL, for example, I mean,
yeah,
that's the PeopleSoft doesn't own their SSL library. So,
right, right. Yeah, I think I saw in People Books as I was kind of looking this up here that they basically just put the glue code together between PeopleSoft and the underlying
right,
libraries using
right,
C and the DLLs.
right.
So, hmm. I don't know, Cal. Do you have any thoughts or where you might use this now that it's kind of brought to the forefront?
I mean, I don't have any ideas that the top of my mind, but this goes in the long list of like, tools that I don't know about or forget about sometimes that like when you do need it, it would be awesome to have.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd be just throw it out to the community as well. If anyone that has a cool use case for this that they have used that they'd like to share,
Hmm.
um, reach out to us, let us know. I'd definitely do a follow up on that because it seems like a really cool thing. It's just, yeah, I've not run across it myself, and I can't think anything on the top of my head outside of what
Yeah.
kind of Jim laid out.
So I have
Yeah.
I have one thought here. So we've got a couple of interfaces that we generate files and then we have to encrypt them before they get
Mm,
sent out to, whatever vendor. Um, and we generally do that encryption on the OS.
Mm.
Just because it's easy, it's just a command line call and then we have our encrypted file and we send it off. But now I'm starting to wonder, would it be better if we just do an app engine on that file because then we control those keys inside PeopleSoft, and keep all of those
in a key
operations
set.
right and keep all those operations inside the PeopleSoft realm versus all right, this file's done. Now the OS goes and does something later on, right? Now there's a handoff there that you maybe don't necessarily have the visibility to. I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that one too, because where pet shines is generating strings. It'll take string input and it'll give you a string output.
Okay.
Usually, the string output is going to be base 64
Okay.
because a lot of these encryptions generate binary results.
Sure.
And so I'm kind of wondering from a file perspective. I don't know. Oh
Mhm.
no, that's an interesting one.
Okay.
Yeah. What brought this to mind again for me was just last week, somebody posted on the OTN forum. They asked about the people could encrypt decrypt functions, which are great for PeopleSoft, but they asked the questions like, what encryption logic or algorithm does it use? And if I were to receive data from someone else, how could I decrypt that? Or if I were to send them data, how would they decrypt it? And I've seen vendors rely on the encrypt and decrypt and the encryption algorithms that are maybe not necessarily published, but ones that they figured out just by investigating PeopleSoft. And you know what else I've seen? I've seen people tools change them.
Oh,
And so then the vendor is kind of stuck trying to figure it out again. Okay, now what do I do?
sure.
And so when I see something like this in the OTN forums, I think to myself, I don't know that you should be using encrypt and decrypt outside of PeopleSoft. I don't know that that's maybe instead look at PET.
Hmm.
I think that's really what it's for.
That's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially since those encrypt and decrypt functions are black boxes versus using
Hmm.
the
Right.
the the pet framework. It's a framework. You can plug and play new encryption algorithms, new keys, all you want.
Right. Exactly. The question is, what algorithm does decrypt use so I can pass it off to the third party? Well, better question is, what algorithm does the third party want to use because I can probably leverage it from PET.
Yeah.
It's true.
Huh. I like
Well,
it.
thanks for sharing that, Jim.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. It's always fun chatting with you. There's inevitably we will learn something or multiple things. And it's just awesome. It's just awesome. All right. Well, that was wonderful. I will talk to you guys later.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Kyle.
You bet. Bye.